If you're tired of fighting with pesky lighting issues on your trailer, or maybe you're putting a new floor in your trailer, it may be a good time just to go ahead and do a full rewire on that. Stick around, I'm going to show you how I do it for my personal stuff, maybe answer any questions, give you some tips and tricks, and you may be surprised on some of the methods I used and the outcome. So before I go purchase any lights or any wiring for my personal trailer, I'm going to check out the original layout and the routing of the existing wire if it has any. This trailer here is fortunate enough for the floor is already routed out so we can see everything, but this will be the same whether or not you have a floor. So I'm going to look through to see if the wiring routing is a viable option or if there's some changes or some tweaks I need to make to that. And then I'm going to see if I do need to make those tweaks, is the style of wiring that it currently has, is that going to work, or maybe I'm going to need to change the wiring and or the lights. So I'm going to do all that, make me a list before I go to the parts store to pick up any material, so I don't have to take a bunch of stuff back or buy something that possibly is not returnable. Maybe you buy it online and then you can't return it. So we're going to take a look through all this and come up with a game plan. I'm pretty well pleased with the way this wiring is routed. I may make a change or two here and there, maybe add a clamp here and there just to help it. I am going to change the way the 7-way is on the front. I'll show you that. The main issue that I see with this, the wiring routing is pretty good. It's the connection. So we're going to move the camera down to connection. You're going to see my old favorite down there, the old Scotch clip. So we are definitely not going to be using those again. So that is my first tip. If you have some of those, keep them around for temporary wiring, but do not use them for permanent wiring. You're not going to be happy. These may work fine for a little while, but you're going to get light flicker. There's kind of an issue. So that's my first tip for me. I'm not going to use those, but I'm going to show you what I am going to use. So let's go pick out our wire. So a couple of things to think of when wiring your trailer. You don't want to underthink it, but you for sure don't want to overthink it. You also want to do what's best for you and what fits your budget. This application, you could run like a bonded 3 or a bonded 4 wire back with a separate brake wire. For what I'm going to do, it all works out about the same money. I'm going to run a 6-way wire. I'm going to use some that's a deep freeze style wire. It just stays a little more flexible during the cold weather. I just think that holds up a little better. So I'm going to use a 6-way for that, for the main harness. And then I will also use some brake wire that's sheathed to hook up the brakes. This trailer does have brakes. If you don't have brakes, then you would not need that. And then for this, to hook up my marker lights, you have a couple of options. If you watched our video on the most important wire, I'll explain this. If not, we'll leave a link in the description below, or we'll leave it somewhere on the camera. I'm going to use a 2-wire system to hook up my markers because I am going to put a common ground throughout the trailer. I will put a chassis ground as well, but if you have a light that only has 1 wire, it's going to ground through the frame of the trailer, and you would only need some single strand wire on that. So that's just something to think about. That all goes, make you a list, get you a plan before you buy any parts or before you get online and start buying stuff off the internet, so you don't waste any products. We will leave a link in the description to any of this stuff we're using today to maybe help you find it if it's not available in your local area. So I'm going to measure my wire out. I will tell you this, run a tape measure to see how much you need. Just don't walk into a parts store and say, hey, I need enough wire for a 16-foot trailer. Depending on how your wiring is routed, they may have no idea. I would have no idea without measuring the trailer myself. You don't want to be too short. I would hate to buy this at, whatever it costs per foot and be 2 foot short or have 15 foot extra. I guess it's better to have a little extra than be too short, but just take some measurements, make you a list, and make a good purchase. Now that we've got our wiring purchased, we have it figured out kind of how we're going to put it, you need to make sure that you get the correct light. So when you go to buy that wiring, if you're going to buy it from Parts Supply or if you're going to buy it online, a couple of things I would tell you. I'm, first of all, not a big fan of wiring kits. I have, or lighting kits. So I have one here, and I got it just to show you. Now these tail lights here are fine. They'll work great for this trailer, the way they mount. They're LED, you're going to be able to see them. But the marker lights they come with, while they would work, the trailer would have to be modified in order to accept this style light. So that's why I don't like lighting kits. Usually the wiring they send with it is cheap. Many times it's not long enough. So I recommend buying your light separately, picking out what you want and picking out what goes back on the trailer so you don't have to modify it unless you're just wanting to upgrade or modify it. For this trailer, it's going to take a stud mount style light. So this is a LED replacement of the incandescent that's on here that is a stud mount that still has the ground wire that we have the option to either put a chassis ground or a common ground, which we will be doing the common ground on this one. So I recommend buying your light separately. If you want to buy a kit, you know, it's not the end of the world. Do what's best for you. Again, that's just how I do it. Some other things you're going to need. I like to use a vinyl coated clamp, you know, maybe get you an assortment pack of different sizes. I'll utilize this to tie down my 7-way cord on the front and maybe to tie up some wiring throughout the trailer as we start running the wiring. May need some self-tappers, may need a wrench or two. I recommend an impact with some sockets, maybe even need a drill in case you need to reroute a wire, unless you have a torch or plasma and you want to do it the old-fashioned way. Pair of crimper cutters, pair of strippers. This tool is a crimper that is made for heat shrink. Do not use this for heat shrink. It will cause the heat shrink material to split when you go to heat it, which is going to defeat the purpose of the heat shrink. So make sure you use a pair of these. We will leave a link to, again, all these tools that we can find. If they're available to you, we'll leave them in the description below. And you'll need an assortment of connectors. So we have just regular vinyl butt connectors, then we have heat shrink. I prefer to use heat shrink on everything. You know, on eyelets, you don't have to use heat shrink if you don't want to. The heat shrink to me does two things. It does seal the wire, but it also just kind of helps hold on to the wire a little bit better. You'll notice I have a few of these in here just for a conversation piece. Again, if you're gonna need to hook up some temporary wiring, maybe that used trailer that you've bought and you're trying to get it home, those are great for that. Then as soon as you can, throw those dudes in the trash and put some good connectors. I'm going to show you one heat shrink butt connector. This one allows you to hook up a large wire to a smaller wire. So if you're having to double up wires, which I'm going to show that here in a minute, sometimes you can just fish them both in a larger butt connector. These are pretty handy to have. Don't use them a lot. These are going to be a little bit more expensive than your standard connector, but I think you can get these online, so I'll try to leave a link for those two that may help you out if you're going from like a 10 gauge wire down to say a 14 or 16 or something like that. May just be a little easier for you. So the question I get all the time is how to make my wiring bulletproof. If you want to make your wiring bulletproof, it is doable on a trailer like this. You're going to need to have weather pack style connectors like you would have underneath the hood of your automobile, some good copper wiring, and you're going to spend a ton of money and a ton of time to do that. For me, I'm not going to do that. I'm also not going to run in conduit. We get a question all the time, can you put my wiring in conduit? We can. It is difficult to do if the trailer was built without conduit, because you're going to go in, cut all your cross members, fish your conduit in sections, weld that in. It's a lot of labor. So yes, it can be done. I will tell you, the biggest problem with wiring is not running at conduit, not soldering. I don't ever solder a trailer. For number one, it's a lot of time to do that. The solder can break loose from vibration if you don't get a good solder and a good heat shrink connector over the top of that. If you'll take this out of the equation, and if you'll put a good plug on the front, whether that be a 7-way or 4-way, and a decent or a good light, that's going to solve the majority of your trouble. The problem with the wiring is usually not the wiring. 10 out of 10 times, it's the connection where the light goes. It's a cheap light and or a cheap plug that you picked up at the big box store. It's usually not the chassis wiring underneath the trailer, unless the goats get into it or a rat gets into it. And at that point, even if you run it in conduit, that wire has to come out of the conduit at some point. Even if you put it in a plastic conduit, if they want to chew it, they're going to chew it. So I'm not going to do it in conduit. I'm going to run the wire underneath the trailer. Not going to try to make it bulletproof, because at the end of the day, if it has trouble, it has trouble. Just know how you wired it so you can get back in there to fix it. So that may surprise you, but I'm not a conduit guy. I'm not a solder guy when it comes to doing a trailer. Just use a good heat shrink connector and a good plug and some good lights. That's going to solve most of your issues. I'm going to rip the wire out of this trailer, get it out of our way. We're going to start fishing our new wire through. I'm going to show you how to make some of the connections. Not going to show you how to do everything on here, because you may change it up a little bit. This is just to give you a general idea of how I would do it for my personal trailer. So maybe that you can use some of that, or take what you got from me and decide, hey, I don't want to do what he did. I'm going to use this method. Hey, that's great. That's how we all learn. I don't want us all to be the same. Just do the best job you can do with the best products that you can, and that's going to save you most of your headache. So I'm going to grab some cutters and we're going to get to ripping. Out with the old, in with the new. So we're gonna go back up front. I'm gonna show you the first change I'm gonna make to this unit, and that's gonna deal with the 7-way plug. Before we move up to the front where the 7-way is gonna go, I'm gonna fish the wire starting about the middle of the trailer forward. That way I don't have to pull all of it from the front to the back or from the back to the front. Just start somewhere kind of in the middle. That just make it a little easier when you're routing your wiring. So originally, they had the wire ran out through this little hole. I'm gonna use a better, heavier gauge wire. It's not gonna fit through that hole. I don't like using the hole anyways. As far as the length of the cord, it can vary. I like to leave a little extra. Even if it's long, you can always wrap it around here. The reason I like to do that, in case you're like me and every once in a while you drag your plug, it does give you an opportunity to put a new plug on without having to section this wire out. So it just gives you a little extra room for error there, so you can always wrap it up. But what I am gonna do here, once I get this set to where I want it, I'm gonna grab a clamp and I'm gonna show you what I do on that. I'll be right back. So I'm gonna use a vinyl coated clamp, and you can kind of put it wherever you want. I'm gonna put it right there. Usually the plug is on that side, and I'm gonna install that with a self tapper. You can also use a bolt. 1/4-inch bolt will work fine, machine screw. And there you go, you're clamped up. When you get ready, you put a 7-way. I'm gonna recommend one. We'll leave that link in the description below. If you wanna know how to wire the 7-way, we do have a video on that we'll leave that specifically talks about the 7-way for utility trailer wiring. Or if you own an RV, we'll have a video on that as well, so we'll leave that. Now we're gonna work our way back to this first set of running lights. I'm gonna show you how to splice that in. On your stud mount lights, on the back side, I don't know if that comes into focus, there's always gonna be a little trough to put the wires in so that you don't smash them when you tighten it down. So make sure that you just don't put the wire like that, because you could pinch it and cause a short. So put it in the little troughs that is molded into the housing. So we're gonna install that, then hook up a wire or two. So I may make some of you cringe, but I am gonna cut this insulation off. Gonna cut it shallow so that we don't try to cut through a wire. We're gonna open it up a little ways just so we can work. Get all the paper out of the way. So we're gonna look for the brown wire and our ground wire. That's gonna be the two we're gonna utilize on this. The brown is gonna be for our marker lights, and the black is going to be for our ground. There's a cord that's used inside here that's made out of paper that I'm gonna cut out of the way. It's just for the assembly process of the wire, just to give some room. So we are going to split these two wires, if you know, and open this up as much as you need to in order to help you make your connection. If you need to come a little bit more, it's not the end of the world. I'll go ahead and do that just to show you if I can do it, you can do it. So we're gonna split this first wire, and we're gonna split this one. Now we're gonna strip them back. So now we're gonna run a wire from one marker light to the other. So I'll measure out a little bit of length here. And you can rough it. You are gonna have some waste. There's really no way around that. Just, you know, try not to waste any more than you have to, because stuff ain't cheap. So on this, on my red wire, I'm gonna use it for the power supply to the marker lamps. So I'm gonna bump up to a yellow heat shrink connector so that I can get both wires in both sides. So I'm gonna stick with black as my ground because that is what my common ground is gonna be in the 6-way cord. You may have a white ground in there. There's nothing wrong with that. You would just hook the black to the brown. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what color that you use on here, but I do like to keep it as far as your left turn being yellow, your right turn being green, your brown being marker lights, blue being brake. Just to at least get it close to the light. If you need to use, a piece of wire that's a different color instead of going out and buying something, that's fine. Just note if you have somebody work on that, you may need to let them know that so that they're not pulling their hair out. So I'm gonna twist those up a little bit. Put my yellow connector on and then use my heat shrink butt connector crimpers. And do the same thing to this wire. And the more you do it, the more confident you'll get, the cleaner your wiring will look. Every once in a while, as long as I've been doing it, I'll do one like, I can't live with that, so I'm gonna cut it out and redo it. A lot of times when I'm talking on camera, I'm trying to think about 2 different things, and I'm a simple man, and I will screw it up. I screwed up in the last video and put the ground wire in the wrong location on the 7-way plug. I thought about editing it out. I thought, no, I'll just put this because we all mess up. So now that's our ground. You can go ahead and heat shrink that if you'd like. And you don't have to have a micro torch. You can use a small heat gun. There's a couple different things you'd use. Just try not to overheat. I do see people with the micro torches overheat sometimes. You want it sealed, you just don't want to melt it. But I also even see some manufacturers underheat sometimes and they don't get a good seal. So now we're gonna let that cool off for a second, and then we're gonna tape it up. The main reason I'm taping it up is not necessarily just to keep water off of it. I'm taping it up just to clean it up and just to keep stuff from flopping around. You can cut this conduit completely off if you would like. I usually leave it unless it's just in my way. So I'm gonna tag that wire back just so the split is even. I'm gonna use some 3M 1776 tape. I know some of you like to comment that it's cheap tape, but again, I'm just using it really just to clean it up. If you want to spend $20 a roll for electrical tape, go for it. Send me a roll. I'll try it out and tell you what I think about it. So something you can do with the floor being out, once you get your floor back in, if this is hanging down in some places, you can clamp up to the bottom side of the floor. That's not going to hurt anything. Just use one of the vinyl coated clamps. You can do that anywhere you'd like. The only thing you'd have to remember if you ever take the flooring out, if your wiring's good, to make sure that you pull those out so you don't mess the wiring up when you do the floor removal. But I mean, that's a good way to do it. If you want to get the sag out, just keep it up against the bottom side of the floor. So now our marker lamp wire is ran. We'll run this one across the other light. On this one here, you're just going to simply split it, cut any extra slack off, then make your connections with your heat shrink connector, ground to ground, power wire to the power wire. Then if you want to, you could put some plastic conduit over it if you want it to look good. I'll show you, I'll do that maybe here in a little bit just to hide that, because it is going to be exposed on the front. You could put a piece of conduit over this whole spot if you're really wanting it to look like a show trailer. I normally don't. This wire has got a good enough UV protectant in it. It's going to last until it's time to do some major work on it again. So again, you can spend a lot of time on it. You can do a lot of overthinking, but if you just put some good connectors and good lights, that's going to solve most of your problem. We're going to go back and hook up the brakes now. So this trailer has brakes on one axle. You can see it's got some Scotch clips. It's got some blue butt connectors. So what we're going to do, we're going to clean this up. So with that being removed, it's gonna be hard to get the camera in there, but we have 2 sets of wires. This is for the left-hand brake. This is for the right-hand brake. It goes through the axle tube to the right-hand side. So you have a couple options here if this wire is bad. You can zip tie it to the outside of the back side of the tube. I'm not a fan of that. It will get you by in a bind. If you're going through the pasture or something like that, it is, does have the potential to rip that out. So I prefer fishing a new wire through the tube. Sometimes we've been getting some axles here lately that they don't have the wire fished through the tube for us like they've done forever, so I guess they're trying to save money. If you're one of those manufacturers out there and you've realized that, let me know why. So we're even having to drill some of the tubes and fish our own wire through. It's very convenient for us, so thanks for that, whoever's engineering that new protocol. So you've got your two wires separate. They're going to be hooked back together. On your brake wire, it doesn't matter what wire goes to what. They're not polarity sensitive. It's really just a direct short to make them work. So we're going to take our 6-way wire, run it back, and we're going to split it again just like we did on the front. Get all of our paper junk out of there. And now we're going to be looking for our brake wire, which is going to be our blue, and our ground wire. So we're going to split both of those. And then I'm going to use some brake wire. I'm going to get my assistant to hand me some brake wire. So on this piece, you're going to double up the connection just like we did on the front. But you'll just be coming out of one side. So you'll go however you want to do it. Like I said, if you want to use the black for the brake, you'll hook those two together and then hook that back in. Same thing on your ground. Here's the important part. On the other end, where it ties in underneath, you need to leave some slack because the suspension is going to work. It's going to articulate up and down. And when you tie these two back, you're going to butt connect those back in, one in one butt connector, or two in one butt connector, then two in the other. Leave you some slack. Something you can do is you can zip tie to the leaf or to the U-bolt in there so it's not flopping. I don't recommend doing it around the spring, but you just want to make sure it's enough slack to move this up and down and it's not going to tear the wires out. Usually if it tears the wires out, tears it out of the back side of the backing plate, and then you have to go internally to do that. So just make this connection as you would on the front. I'll show it to you real quick. And this is where, if you want to use one of the reduced style connectors, you can. I will tell you, this is made for 10 or 12 AUG. So if you want to use one of the reduced style to make sure it crimps down good, you can do that. Many times it will crimp this down depending on what size wiring you use. So we're going to crimp that and I'll show you. So with that crimped, I missed the crimp just a little bit. So you can tug on it. As long as you feel like it's tight, you're good to go. If you have any worries about that, you can use the reduced size if you need to. I'm on that. I don't know if I got that in the camera or not. And it's marked blue and yellow for the two different sizes. But usually this will work just fine. And then you will put these two together. I'm going to strip just a little bit more of the outer insulation off, just to make it a little easier to work. So I'm going to use my black wire for the brake. And you repeat the process for the ground side of it. And then when you go to hook this up, just make sure you put two on one side and two on the other, just because this is your jumper for the right hand side. So you want to make sure that you take one wire from the backing plate and then tie it to one wire that's in the axle tube. It's easy to just connect these two together and these two together. That's not going to do anything. So one wire from the backing plate and one wire from your jumper that's crossing the axle. I recommend doing that first. Now on this one, they usually use very small wire. You can use a blue connector and that will get both your wires in there, no trouble. And then hook up the second wire from the backing plate to the second wire that's crossing to the right hand side. If you go and do that first, you're less likely to make a mistake. Then you're just going to connect those in there. We'll do that now, and it doesn't matter which one goes to which. And so that brake connection is done, other than tape up and tie up. Again, like I said, if you want to tie it like that,
That way it will move up and down with your suspension. Do not tie it up here, it will get smashed. So if you're gonna tie it with a zip tie. You can usually feed one in right behind that. Just do it like that right there. That'll keep it from getting in the wheel. And then you can tie the slack out of this wire here, again, up against the bottom of your trailer if you want to. Just don't leave it hanging down like that. It needs to kind of be upright. So if you do that, it's gonna move with the axle. Tape that up. So something you may want to wait on before you tape everything up, I just wanted to show it on the front. You may want to check everything out to make sure you didn't get any wires crossed, because if you did, you may have to go in and do a little detective work. So you may leave the tape off, maybe even wait on the heat shrink until you're confident everything is working, then come back and finish up and clean up. So now we're going to move to the rear. I'm going to show you how to hook the tail light up, then I'm going to show you the most important wire after that. We're back at our left rear tail light connection, so we're going to split the insulation once again. By the time you get to the end, you'll be a master at this. And for your left turn, since we're using a common ground, we'll need 3 wires. You're gonna need the yellow, but here's what I'm gonna do on the yellow. The yellow runs to the other side of the trailer, but we don't need the yellow on the right side. We only need the green. So on the yellow, I'm gonna cut the yellow off where it feeds to the right-hand side. So that's just a dead wire in the loom. That could be used for something different later on. We're gonna cut that. We are gonna split the running light wire and the ground. So that's the wires we're gonna use to make our left-hand connection. Here's where I am gonna use some 3-wire. So this may surprise you a little bit, but on this 3-wire, it does not have a ground in there. It has a green, yellow, and brown. The green is gonna be for right turn, the yellow is left turn, and the brown is for clearance light when you're talking about wiring code. But I'm gonna utilize this 3-wire so I don't have to bond my own wire. I'm gonna utilize the yellow wire for the left turn, I'm gonna utilize the brown for the marker lamp, and I'm gonna utilize this green wire for my ground, okay? That's just what I'm gonna do, it's how I do it. I am gonna wrap it up in some conduit. So I'm gonna snip all these, put some butt connectors on it, put the conduit in it, fish it down, then we'll make our tie-in. Now we'll make our connection up at the light itself. Yellow to yellow for the left, then brown to brown for the clearance or marker lights, whatever you want to call them. Running lights. And then I'm going to utilize this green wire for our ground. Now this trailer here, see if we can move the camera down here, grab my flashlight. It does have a piece of angle that's welded to fish the wires through, so that is very handy. If you don't have something like that, you're going to utilize a clamp, or you may want to weld you a piece of conduit, square tubing or something similar to run your wire in just to help protect it. So that is pretty nice. We are going to wrap it in some conduit though, just to make it look pretty. Let that cool off for a minute, and I'm going to show you how I wrap my conduit. You don't have to do it this way. I just think it looks a little cleaner and it stays on a little better. So I'm going to take me a piece of tape. I'm going to start as high as I can go up here. I'm going to leave it little tag end hanging down. Then I'm going to take my conduit. I'm going to run that up to where the tape is sticking out of the split. Let's see if we can get a picture of that in there, if I don't knock all my connectors off. So you can see the tape is sticking out of the split. Now I'm going to wrap that around the conduit if I don't stick it back to the cell. It's a little tight. What that does, that just keeps your conduit from slipping. It's all you're doing there. Then I'm going to attempt to feed this through our little angle. And that's that. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my ground so I don't forget what I'm doing. See if I can shine a light on this. It's kind of dark back here. Just gonna tie it to one side here. And something else you can do, if you feel like if you've maybe got a smaller gauge wire, if you feel like it ain't gonna crimp good, you can always double that wire over. Make it a little tighter if you need to. This one you don't, this wire is thick enough. But in case you're running a smaller gauge wire, just a little hack. Then we're going to hook up our left turn, so it's just going to be a single connection. There's no reason to double it because we've just killed the wire going to the right hand side. It's not needed, so we'll use a blue for it. Okay, then we'll hook up our markers. Last but not least, this can be doubled on one side. So that's that connection. So now just heat shrink, tape it up, and then we're going to fish our wire across to the right hand side. And then we got one in the middle we can't forget. So right here we'll have a little bit of an issue, but it's nothing major. I'm going to show you what I would do. So as we affectionately call it, the DOT bar. This light is probably the light that most commonly gets drug off, broke off, kicked, hit, whatever. So it gets replaced all the time. This is a LED with a single wire. So it will be using a chassis ground this one, so we're going to replace it. But as you can see here in the middle, there's no place to run the wire. There's no conduit, there's no nothing. You could put a piece of conduit in here if you would like, and if you want to do that, go for it. Here's what I normally do. I will make this connection, I will split it, hook it into the running lights just like we've done the other connections. Then I'm going to cable clamp it underneath to the bottom side of the floor, whether I have an existing floor or once I replace the floor, and then install that, and it's going to be good to go. So again, do what you want to. If you got the time and the conduit, weld you something in there to hold it, but if not, going to the bottom of the floor, it's going to be just fine. It'll last longer than the light will, I promise you that. So I've cut our excess off the right hand side. Some of you may say, hey, that's a bunch of waste. I'm going to say, hey, that's just long enough to make a new 7-way pigtail for the front when I drag mine off, or the cows or goats shoot off. So don't throw that away, put that up somewhere handy. So on this side, we have our wires exposed. And just as a quick reminder, we'll snip this off so we don't forget. This yellow wire for the left turn, we terminated it before we crossed it over to the left wire on the opposite side. So I'm gonna clip that off so it's not in my way. This red wire here, you have a couple options. You may energize this wire at the front and you may not. So what I'm gonna recommend doing is putting a piece of heat shrink over this, or a heat shrink butt connector, just so that it doesn't ever become a short issue. Same thing on the brake wire. Just cap the end of that off. And so that leaves you with these 3 wires here. That leaves you with your running lights, your ground, and your right turn. Once you bring your bonded 3-wire down from your light, you're going to use the yellow wire for your ground, your green wire for your right turn, and your brown wire for the running lights. Make those connections and you'll be good to go. If you would like, you could put you a secondary chassis ground. You could put an extra wire in here coming out and bolt it to the frame somewhere if you want to. That's not a bad idea. If you watch our most important wire video, I talk about that. This would be a good place to do that. Tape that up, get it wrapped up, and we're almost done. We got one important thing to do on this trailer that it did not come with, but it's supposed to have it, so I'm going to go show you where that's going to tie in. So this trailer did not come with a breakaway system for the brakes, but it has brakes, so it does need one. So you're gonna need to purchase that, find a place to mount it. This may be a good place to mount it. Out here is an option. If I can get away with it, I don't like putting it out here because it can get knocked off. So I'd recommend in this area here, once you install that, you're gonna follow the manufacturer's wiring instructions. On this one, it happens to be on the back, so don't throw the box away if you purchase one of these. You will split the insulation open, make your connection, and at this point, once you open this up and you tie the ground wire in from here, you're also going to run a ground wire out, drill you a hole, put you a 1/4-inch bolt, preferably not a self-tamper, and you're going to put a chassis ground in here. This chassis ground is important to help you with any shorts that you may have, and if you don't have a chassis ground on this unit, that DOT bar light at the back would not operate because it is a single wire and it works off of a chassis ground. So once you install this, implement your chassis ground here. You will install the breakaway switch per the instructions from the manufacturer, run that through and make all those connections, then just tape that up as we've done on everything else. We do have a video that really goes in depth on the breakaway system. If you want to know what that's about, check that out. Not going to cover it in this one. And that's it on this. Just check all your wiring out. If everything's good, do your final heat shrinks if you need to, your final tape ups, and you're good to go and ready to go down the road. So I hope this explains some stuff, hope it answers some questions, and just remember, do what's in your budget, do the best you can on it, and just use a decent connector and a decent light, and it's gonna make it more bulletproof than you can think. But sure, don't overthink it, and we will see you down the road.